Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, covering for Eric Voss while he's out on paternity leave, and today I'm breaking down the 5th episode of What If Captain Carter Fought the Hydra Stomper. This episode is actually a sequel from the first episode of the last season, but follows up from the finale when Uatu sent the heroes back to their specific timelines after they finished cleaning up his mess. This episode has so many callouts to the MCU and surprises us with a little snippet of another episode, 1602! They did an amazing job on this episode all in all though, so touching, and nothing I like more than two women in the MCU kicking it and kicking ass. So let's jump into this episode with a little more Easter eggs and details you might have missed, and maybe clear up some confusion as to like timeline stuff, because I'll tell you right now, I was both. But first, we have some What If inspired merch over at nerdride.shop. We have Echo gear, Loki gear, and Christmas for January gear. Go check out our awesome merch over there. It's a great way to support the channel, but also look fresh as hell while doing it. Okay, let's jump in. We opened during the Battle of New York. In the first Avengers movie, a Chitauri warrior screams on top of a car, but is immediately blasted in the face by Natasha, who is still voiced by Lake Bell. She's not saved by Captain America, though. She's saved by Captain Carter. We're still following the great adventure that is Captain Carter from last season's What If Peggy Carter became the first Avenger. We saw Peggy, and then we saw Steve in the Hydra Stomper suit before she was shot into the future, meeting Clint and Nick Fury a few days before Loki got there. We know it's a continuation from that episode because Uatu mentions at the beginning, a little later in the episode, this is a sequel, and also we're picking up where the finale post-credit scene left us. Like Captain America, Peggy was greeted in the future by S.H.I.E.L.D. Next we know she's fighting alongside Natasha, calling her a new friend. So this must be the first mission Steve was handed by Fury in the first Avengers movie. Unlike the weird sexual tension we normally get between these two, we get a nice best friend duo from Peggy and Nat. Peggy uses her shield to protect Natasha just like Cap does in the movies, protecting her from falling debris. This is even around that same scene where we see Natasha has the Chitauri weapon and she almost used it on Steve during the movie. Peggy then boomerang throws the shield to the enemies, then catches it.
Nice. Little trick I picked up in Berlin.
Captain America wasn't really like fighting in Berlin until Civil War, but Captain Carter last season was kicking ass and surprising herself with this new boomerang effect. Then Natasha does this sick ass combo, saying she had a weird childhood in Moscow. As we know, Natasha was a child of the Red Room working under Dreykov and his weebos. That's how he says it. They're all forced to live fake lives, spy, fight, kill, and endure non-consensual hysterectomies. It's an awful existence. But this Avengers team-up is already very different from the first movie. Yes, we still have Natasha, Clint, Thor, and Tony, but we also have Captain Carter. And I think that's Wasp in the Ant-Man suit. The design is the same as the Ant-Man and Wasp suit, but it's red and black now instead of that dark navy we saw in that movie. Though we don't see Bruce Banner's Hulk, Banner is still alive and a scientist in this time. Nat recommended reaching out to him for help. He's just not fighting in this team because A, he's just a normal scientist maybe at this time, or B, he doesn't want to. Peggy leads the team like Steve did, executing a plan of attack. Then she launches Natasha off her shield like we saw them do as well. Shot for shot, Natasha grabs the Chitauri aircraft and takes off. Peggy and Natasha face off with Loki and his punchable face, and we cut to the intro we've been getting with Uatu. I'll be honest, when I was watching this episode and I saw Rachel Weisz's name, I was like, whoa, wait, what? Then it said Elizabeth Olsen. I said, wait, what? That's a little bit of a spoiler seeing those names at the beginning of the credits, but I was stoked nonetheless. Uatu opens the episode again.
I don't do sequels, normally. What's the point of revisiting the story when there are infinite stories to be told?
We got this snippet of audio from the trailer teasing it's a sequel, which I like and I think is funny, technically because the episode where he interfered too much was basically also a sequel. It was 2 parts, but you know, I guess he did say he normally doesn't do a sequel, so. Either way, the Watcher is clearly inspired by Peggy, and what's not to be inspired by this wonderful, amazing, iconic woman. Also, she jumps into Multiverse of Madness for 5 minutes and gets slaughtered. Just give my girl a full-on episode, or, you know, give her another series, whisper, whisper. Uatu is shuffling the shards around, and we see Natasha, the Frost Giant, Loki, and some faint others reshaped and filling the broken walls. One wall he aligns perfectly, sort of locks into place with a seal of gold. Then we see scenes from the fight in Berlin in season 1. And he's right, she's the hero of World War II, a woman ahead of her time, but also literally, because they won the war last season, then she jumped into the future. Uatu glues another piece of time, piecing back the events of the last season's What If the Watcher broke his oath. In that episode, Ultron Vision was free and became the #1 threat to the multiverse. Uatu then collected a team of the universe's mightiest, you know, I wouldn't say heroes, I would call them warriors though. Without their assistance, the multiverse would have crumbled. In the end, he did return them to the exact moments they left their realities, but unfortunately, Peggy's was in the wrong time since she jumped hers to begin with. She wanted to go back to Steve, but Uatu assured her that the new time she was in needed Captain Carter. Oh, someone said that about me in my time. I like the role reversal also on these two. In Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Natasha picked up Steve while running, and here it's Peggy picking up Nat. It's also eye-opening to see how the transition for Peggy looks versus Steve. He was kind of unyielding, but Peggy's like, get in, loser, we're going shopping. She even makes a note that she doesn't like running in circles like Steve always did. In the 2014 movie, the mission was to rescue hostages on a hijacked S.H.I.E.L.D. ship called the Lumerian Star. However, Nat was saving S.H.I.E.L.D. intel while Steve was really rescuing the hostages. It created a hostile atmosphere because trust is key, and that's important to note because in this episode, it wasn't hostages or intel, it was Steve Rogers and the Hydra Stomper, which I guess you could say that Steve in the Hydra Stomper was a hostage and also intel, but you know what I mean. It wasn't manipulative or like an untrustworthy tactic. Nat did it out of friendship. The pirates were after the Hydra Stomper's suit that homed Steve Rogers. Back in the day, little Steve was in the Hydra Stomper as himself. In this reality, he's basically Bucky. So we learned from Fury later that Bucky and Steve created their own two-man army and destroyed every Hydra base on Earth. That was until the last one killed Steve in Argentina in 1953. As we know, after the war, a lot of Nazis ran to Argentina in hiding, so something major here took place at that time. As a note, when researching, I found out in 1953, Hydra was still scheming to destabilize the world, using people in power to really shake things up. Khrushchev was in power as the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, organized by Hydra. Essentially, in the most heartbreaking way, Peggy and Steve just cannot catch a break. In this timeline, she's turned into his #1 enemy. But for now, we don't know about the future. A weird thing about when you watch me in these videos is you only ever see me awake, but you gotta know I'd rather be asleep. Sleep is the best, and if you want to make your sleep even better, you should use Pillow. Pillow is a sleep tracking app that can help analyze your sleeping habits and steer you towards healthier, sleepier sleep. If you have an Apple Watch, Pillow will start automatically when you doze off. If not, just hit a button on your iPhone or iPad to get going. Pillow's scientifically backed sleep analysis will track the stages of your sleep, your sleeping heart rate, blood oxygen levels, respiratory rate, and environmental audio levels. Pillow can even wake you up a few minutes earlier than your alarm if it senses that you are in a lighter sleep stages. That means waking up less groggy and more refreshed. Plus, Pillow has a bazillion relaxing sounds that help you fall asleep, which, yes, please, I need that. Urban rainfall, even if it's actually raining out. I want to hear water on the sidewalk as I pass out. For new Pillow subscribers, use code NEWROCKSTARS20 to get 20% off Pillow Premium and start your free 7-day trial using the link in the description below. Nat makes RoboCop reference, and yes, Steve is like RoboCop, just not the good one, the big bulky one that keeps killing people because he's broken. The Hydra Stomper has been upgraded, of course, since we last saw it before the finale post-credit scene, and now has red accents and a red star for Russia, just like Bucky's arm. There's also a number 88 on his body, which could be a reference to Tales of Suspense, the comic run that first introduced Peggy Carter, but in issue 88-89, Bucky Barnes shows up as a robot, like we're sort of seeing here. When he was fighting alongside Peggy, his eyes were blue, later turning yellow in shock, now red because he's clearly evil. It shoots bullets and it's built like a rotary cannon on the cuffs and shoots missiles. Originally, all Steve was really doing was smashing things and shooting these blue blasts of energy. He's also like the new Crimson Dynamo suit that turned up in Moscow. Peggy throws her shield at the Hydra Stomper and it reveals Steve's face. He's just technically older and has facial hair, whereas Bucky just straight up looked exhausted and had longer hair. In Winter Soldier, Steve hit Bucky with the shield and ripped off his mask in a sick-ass flip instead of Peggy's signature "take it to the dome" move. He shoots off the ship and now they've released the Winter Hydra Stomper. When Steve sets off those missiles and is floating in front of the moon, all of it just looks like the Hydro logo. I don't know if that was like meant to happen, if it was a creative choice, an homage, but I noticed that. Peggy's pissed at Nick like Steve was for lying, which we know he technically like didn't do like last time. This time he was also fed wrong intel, believing he was dead, and as we even saw in episode 2, there were rumors that Bucky was alive as an agent for Russia, just like Steve was around as a Hydra Stomper in this time. Also, it's very important to note that Fury just confirmed that there is a Bigfoot in that timeline. In our universe, we just got that guy on the wall in Werewolf by Night. In this story though, another turn of events, it wasn't the Soviet Union / Hydra. The Red Room actually found and used the Hydra Stomper as a weapon. The idea feels so easy and so good, and I don't know why I didn't like try to put this together. In the comics, Bucky was turned into an assassin by the Soviets and worked for Russia's Department X, where he ended up being trained at the Red Room and did the Black Widow Ops program as a trainer, where he met Natasha for the first time and they eventually fell in love. So it's not like it hasn't been done before, but I don't know why I didn't think about it. And in even bigger news, an older Bucky is here, still voiced by Sebastian Stan, just in an old man's voice, and I'm truly obsessed with it. He's alive in this universe as the Secretary of State, so he's our Thunderbolt Ross. This man says this:
"Surely you understand that the Sokovian aid package is generous, considering
it doesn't cover hospitals, schools, or new roads. Fix it. I won't have a country torn apart by civil war because we didn't do the right thing."
In such a weird way, I think he dropped an Easter egg on themselves. So Bucky responds to the Sokovian aid packages alongside mentioning just the phrase Civil War. During Civil War, Thunderbolt Ross enacted the Sokovian Accords after the Avengers caused so much damage saving the day all the goddamn time. This way, they'll just be monitored, must get approval before joining in any fights. This was all named after the events after Sokovia. Instead, it looks like Bucky created a Sokovian aid package to fix the damages. Then in comes Brock Rumlow, voiced by the same man who played him in the movies, Frank Gria. Bucky tells him he may be old, but he's punched Nazis and shared beers with aliens. It's a reminder that he fought Hydra forever, but the alien one is new to me. He's the Secretary of State though, and this is the MCU, so he's probably had some kind of diplomatic meetings with alien-adjacent beings on Earth. Steve's mission was to allegedly kill Bucky, our Secretary of State. Below in the belly of S.H.I.E.L.D., we see the little S.H.I.E.L.D. worker bees going away at it, similar to how they always look in the MCU. A giant map of the world is on the screen, nothing too specific. They always include this circle with atmospheric gibberish like Tony has in his Iron Man suits. Then Nat locks onto the Hydra Stomper, and we get a series of random alphabetical letters and numbers sizing him up. Then the target locks. Bucky stands between the plane and the Hydra Stomper protecting Steve. He says this:
Steve would be stupid enough to do the same for me.
Bucky actually saves Steve a lot more in the MCU, but I'd argue only physically and usually from things he started in the first place. But he's right. Steve would do this and literally lost friends, colleagues, and career protecting and fighting for Bucky in another universe. Bucky says, let's get a drink like old days, and it gets him for a moment that he's like, psych! Luckily, Peggy shows up, smashes through a million ceilings and into the air, still fighting. Nat pulls up in what looks like the Quinjet and catches them. Nat takes them the same kill to Scotland, and just like S.H.I.E.L.D., I've never heard of this place before. It's revealed here that the suit is preserving his age and body, and if they remove it, he dies. Each time he activates it, it kills him a little bit inside, like Jane Foster with Mjolnir. Peggy says Steve might be stuck in some frozen prison in frozen carbonite, and she's seen Star Wars, which reminds me how Steve writes down all the new things he needs to try. Peggy's already immersed in it. Black Widow says this:
Before I joined S.H.I.E.L.D., I spent 5 days in a Hungarian sewer tracking down and killing the head of the Red Room.
Are you certain you killed him?
I mean, I stabbed him in the carotid artery with a corkscrew, so yeah. I think I did.
Firstly, if you watch Harley Quinn's animated show, Lake Bell as Poison Ivy is the rated R version of Lake Bell as Black Widow, and made me realize how similar the two characters are and should be. Secondly, we learned that she killed the leader, who I presume is Dreykov, which our Black Widow tried doing in our universe, yet this one succeeded in a more brutal murder. Steve is brought back and he says he owes Peggy a date, which he said right before she disappeared at the end of episode 1 last season. It's also like their whole thing. They say it all the time. They just need to dance. You know, back in the day, there was nothing that they could do but dance. We love dancing. The number on the side of the Quinjet says 42 S.H.I.E.L.D., which could be a reference to a lot of things. 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Comics issue number 42, where Fury takes on Hydra. 2, it could be 42, the prison from Earth's Mightiest Heroes. It kind of resembles the new Flying Red Room. It was a prison, but also an abduction holding space, like the Red Room. 3, it could be the answer to everything, like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We're at the Sokovian military base, where in the 90s, the Red Room moved in and made it look like a basic American town. Nat and Peggy share another exchange, but this time about John Mellencamp, the real musician who absolutely makes Dad rock, as Peggy puts it. This little town is giving like High Evolutionary meets Hexview meets Doom Towns. It's so eerie and creepy. I don't know if I like it, but it's also the best place to have a crazy fight scene without damaging real innocent people. The music plays that Peggy and Steve finally danced to in the movies, and I hate and love this song. It sort of haunts me. Then they're taken out of this lovely moment when Widow bites electrocute them. We've seen these things before in Black Widow, and it takes a full-on army to take down Peggy Carter. It's like watching King Kong get taken down in the 2005 one. Then we see the new Flying Red Room, just like the one we saw in Black Widow. The bottom of this one has a triangle though, where the other one had like a circle target. The new Red Room leader is Melina, voiced and still played by Rachel Weisz. We are winning. And in this story, we keep that trope that it's Nat's mom. The plan was to lure Captain Carter and study her. Melina makes note of Captain Carter's movie. She meant the musical, which like Steve Rogers, the musical, I'm sure is very British and very fun. The next sequence of shots we get, especially with the widows chasing Nat, is so good. They're all like assassin ballerinas, which I guess they are trained in. Melina uses her history with Natasha to take her down, an injury on her bike, which she got when she was in the 3rd grade. We saw her using her bike at the beginning of Black Widow, so we know that she actually likes riding. This scene is like the one in Black Widow when the girls are jumping Nat. She also uses the same Red Widow bites to take them down. In a sad turn of events, Peggy puts down her shield and she admits she was using fighting to distract her from how much she missed Steve. She doesn't care if he kills her as long as she's going with him, which is wild as hell. Girl, do not do that. Do not go down for this man. She knows his only way out is to save her by destroying the Red Room and blowing it up from the inside. The Red Room comes crashing down just like it did in the movie, with pieces of debris all over the place. Uatu watches as the town becomes a true Doom town. Luckily, there's no Thunderbolt Ross here, just Bucky who understands what's going on. So now Nat and Peggy decide to search for Steve, who might still be out there and worth saving, and then this happens.
What the hell is this?
Hey, Natasha!
Peg! Peggy! Peg! Where are you?
That's A good question.
Peggy opened her eyes to 1602 with Nick Fury and the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Merlin. My like weird fantasy cosplaying just came out of my brain. I love 1602. They need her help protecting the Queen just like they did in the comics, and I'm so excited to dive into this episode. It's such a weird comic run. It's so fun. Also, Wanda wasn't that great in the comics in 1602. Kind of a baddie, but Nick Fury isn't a baddie. So I just need to know what's going on, and we'll get into that the next episode we see it. And that's it for my breakdown of episode 5 of What If Captain Carter Fought the Hydra Stomper. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lulu_Clemons. Follow New Rockstars. Subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.